O Lord, our hearts rejoice that you kept us alive to see another new beginning, the beginning of another year and the start of a season of life we have never seen before. That you, for all that you did to ensure that our families, friends, community, and nation have been kept safe. We learned from your teachings that whenever things become dark and fearful, the times when our knowledge and human wisdom fails us, your thoughts and teachings for us is how to return to the fountain of all wisdom and counsel. We are at such juncture presently in our country and our daily life. There are lots of divisions, bitterness, fear, and lack of trust. Oh Lord, your light always put darkness to flight. That is why we pray tonight, that in this first council meeting of this year, 2023, let your light shine. I pray all these, that your faithful servants who are here to deliberate over the affairs of our borough, oh Lord, let your light shine in all the complexity and in all areas of this meeting tonight. Give them the wisdom of Solomon to reason with one another. Let your counsel reign supreme in all of this discussion. I pray for the mayor. Grant her the grace to lead this meeting effectively and efficiently. I pray for the head of council, the leader of the opposition, that together with the cabinet and the shadow cabinet, there will be unity of purpose. All across our boroughs, various cities, region, and the whole of the United Kingdom, we ask that the spirit of forgiveness, love, peace, our unity will reign and rule in our lives. Lord, I declare that 2023 will be a year of recovery, restoration, and abundance. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor Chindi. Can we remain standing, please, for a 1-minute silence for the passing of a former councillor, Councillor Peter Kemp. Thank you. Thank you very much. You remain seated. Thank you and welcome to the meeting of the Council, 12th of January 2023. Just before we officially start the meeting, can I ask everyone to check their mobile phones, please? Can you make sure they are off or on silence? I will give you a couple of seconds to do that. Thank you. So we will start with order point 1. Apologies for absence.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and good evening. I have apologies from Councillor Sweeting.
Thank you very much. Order point 2, minutes. To receive the last minutes of the Council, which is held on the 17th of November, which you have with you. Can I take them as agreed? Thank you very much. Point 3 is declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest at the Council meeting tonight? I will take that as no. Thank you. And on to order number 4, the Mayor's announcements. The last council meeting seems so far away now. Christmas has passed us so quickly, and I do hope everyone has managed to have a well-earned rest and are fully restored for January. I'd like to take this opportunity in wishing you all a healthy and prosperous 2023. It was quite a challenge to cast my mind back prior to Christmas, as it was exceptionally action-packed and it was full steam ahead in the Mayor's duties. It has had an interesting historical thread all throughout last year, and coming to the end of last year is no exception. We saw it continue as a Ruislip Old Folks Association was presented with one of the last Queen's Awards for voluntary service. The council was also presented with a wonderful picture which was actually drawn by the Deputy Lieutenant, Bruce Baker. Do take a look. It will be up in the chambers. Bruce did this as a huge thank you for all of the council's support over the years that he's been Deputy Lieutenant. We also received a personal card from the future King, King Charles III, thanking us for serving his mother, the late Queen, and that is also in the Mayor's Parlour, so do have a look. And a big thank you comes from the future King. Thank you from me to everyone who joined the Mayor's civic service and celebrations. It was a wonderful service, thank you very much, and it was certainly a real credit to our borough. What made it so extra special was seeing a wonderful array of multiculture shine through, with many of the multi-faith leaders present. This is such a huge credit to everyone here in the borough for their hard work in integrating and recognising all diversity and culture that we have here in Hillingdon. Myself and my consort Marios and the girls have been busy attending school events, and some schools, such as Oakwood School, Viners and Bishop Ramsey, have showed how much they appreciate our council here, and also how much gifted and talented our younger generation are, and their interest in the borough, their interest historically, and their interest in the council. And I think we may even have a few councillors, maybe a few MPs, and maybe a few mayors in the pipeline from our younger generation. The highlights of the past months also included our disability sector schools. Meadow High and colleges such as Green Corridor are both shining a huge beacon of hope and success in our borough. If you haven't been to either of those schools, I really recommend you go and have a look, especially the Green Corridor, which I didn't even know existed in our borough. Our supportive work that we do in the borough with our dementia team and of officers, and also our team of officers who organise the tea dances, they all give a huge lifeline to our community, and our thanks to the officers for their hard work. There's always here in the council many success stories and recognition of the hard work, the over and above daily duties, and we acknowledged this recently in our staff awards ceremony at the bunker. Myself and the leader saw the dedication, the encouragement and the selfless acts all completed with such a loving heart. It was really humble to be part of that awards ceremony. Finally, we are always at the forefront of representing our borough, making new contacts, encouraging and signposting. This was seen firsthand in an event organised by Safe Start, a wonderful Irish charity. Their foundation was set up for Irish and non-Irish communities, and actually the networking has led them to sponsor our next event, which you may have guessed already is an Irish night. The Irish night will support the charities, and we will be seeing Irish dancing, which we can join in at, singing, and of course an Irish stew. A final thank you to Councillor Singh, who raised over £2,800 in a very icy and very cold walk. Thank you to everyone who supported him, and thank you, Councillor Singh, for doing it that day. I think it took around 24 hours, was it just left? So it was brilliant. So thank you very much. It was an incredibly icy morning. It wasn't the best to do the walk. So thank you very much. Okay, we now move on to order number 5, report from Hillingdon Democratic Services.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just 2 urgent items for noting.
Thank you. That's noted. Can we move on to order number 6, please? Council tax and business rates forecast. I need to put my teeth in tonight. Councillor Goddard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As is customary at this Council's January meetings, this agenda item meets our statutory obligation to calculate this authority's council tax base as it stood at the 30th of November last, and to provide a forecast of business rates income for the coming financial year. Madam Mayor, our council tax base is calculated in terms of Band D equivalent properties. As at the 30th of November 2022, this base has been calculated at 103,625 properties, which actually represents a net reduction of 215 from the base reported by me in this chamber 12 months ago. Whilst the number of physical properties added to the base has increased by 1,064, this increase has been exceeded by the aggregate negative effect of growth in discounts and exemptions, the council tax reduction scheme, and an allowance made for an anticipated reduction in collection rates. It should further be noted that approval is sought here this evening to amend the Empty Homes Council Tax Premium and to make changes to the Council Tax Reduction Scheme as detailed in the agenda papers, and that these changes will have the positive effect of mitigating the financial impact on our 2023-24 budget of the small reduction in the council tax base. Madam Mayor, turning to the forecast of our business rates income for 23-24, this is projected to amount to a gross yield of £330.8 million. However, it should be noted that only 30% of this is retained by this council, and indeed is further reduced by various tariff and levy mechanisms, such that our projected income for 23-24 will amount to £60.7 million, or a mere 18% of the gross yield. Of the initial 70% not retained by Hillingdon, 33% goes to central government, and an even greater 37% to the Greater London Authority. Our net yield of £60.7 million represents an increase of £4 million on the current financial year levels, which is attributable to positive movements in the rating list and the commendable economic recovery made from our business community post-pandemic. This income is all reflected within our 23-24 draft consultation financial budget, which will be considered by this chamber on the 23rd of February next. Madam Mayor, I therefore move recommendations A to G, which are set out within the agenda papers for this item. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Goddard. Is that seconded?
Madam Mayor, I second and reserve my rights. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? No. Is that agreed? Thank you. We now move on to Order 7, and that is to be moved by Councillor Lavery.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I formally move the Statement of Gambling Policy for 22-23 to 25. This policy has been approved by Cabinet and has also been the subject of public consultation. It reflects minor amendments to the current policy, as there have been no major statutory changes since we last reviewed the policy. There are two recommendations to Council: that the revised statement of gambling policy be adopted as a policy framework document, and that the change to the Ward Councillor calling procedure for gambling applications be approved and included within the Constitution. I therefore move, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lavery. Is that seconded?
Madam Mayor, I second. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? Is that agreed? Wonderful. We now move on to questions from members, Order 8, and we start off with question point 8.3, and it is being called by Councillor Denys.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can the Cabinet Member for Health and Social Care please advise how Hillingdon Hospital is currently managing its discharge of patients back into our community?
Thank you. Councillor Palmer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Denys, for your question. Happy New Year to everybody here in the chamber and everybody that's watching at home. The Council is well known across our North West London area and our colleagues of having good partnership working with our health colleagues. And in the run-up to Christmas and New Year, this continued to be evident. The focus being to support the preparation for the additional winter pressure on beds. We entered this period as the best North West London vaccinated borough against COVID, and in the top 2 for flu vaccination uptake. Important to state this, as the flu-like illness has been the cause of greater pressure on both primary care and the Hillingdon Hospital. These chart-topping successes are due to our partnership working, our health roadshows, and the voluntary health sector and council working together. Consequently, I can state at the outset the sector feedback from London Gold calls over the Christmas period places the North West London region in the top performing on hospital discharge in London. Obviously, this council works closely with Hillingdon Hospital to manage the safe discharge of residents back into the community, working in line with statutory guidance under Health and Care Act 2022. There are 4 pathways currently in situ which originate at the hospital. Referral documents are sent from the hospital electronically to Hillingdon Social Care Direct. Entered into case management, referral tasks generated and assigned to the hospital discharge team, who work 7 days a week, multi-agency calls and triaging to confirm patient discharges. The pathways are 50% simple, no formal input from social care or health needed. 45% support to recover at home, able to return home with support from social care and or health. 4% is rehabilitation or short-term care in 24-hour bed-based settings, and a percentage requiring 24-hour nursing care or long-term care. I won't elaborate on the complexity of this, safe to say it's a widely used model and is respected well for its success. The challenges for the Hillingdon system could be summarised with an average 95% occupancy rate of care homes beds within the borough. A strategic approach was required when blocking available beds to ensure, whilst the flow of discharges could be maintained, the council left adequate market capacity to make the longer-term placements after the initial social work assessment post-discharge. Well-established processes and our strong partnership working have ensured that Hillingdon residents have left hospital at the right time with the right support against a challenging backdrop. Home care staffing challenges have and continue to present all local authorities with challenges in capacity at this time. We cannot ignore, whatever our personal views and or our political stance, that the ambulance and nursing strikes created challenges for the Hillingdon Hospital at various stages. The challenges and uncertainty continue. Noting the nurses did not strike at Hillingdon, the impact from these hospitals that did potentially redirected people's choice of where to present to A&E. The pressures and impact were primarily experienced at the point of admission to Hillingdon. In parallel to these was a pre-Christmas surge in presentations to the emergency department by concerned parents with their children in relation to strep A. This in turn would have created increased demand for admission and subsequently beds. Overall, the performance to date, which is regularly monitored by the Health and Wellbeing Board, jointly chaired by myself and my health colleague on a rotation basis, of all systems partners in getting people supported home or to a place of residence has been good. It should be noted, however, that like most years, winter pressures increase through January into March each year, and the system will continue the need for resilience and persistence. NHS data, which I have before me, which I won't read out, it shows that Hillingdon are well above the London average for NHS performance metrics in discharge. Just to give you an example of that, on admissions on Christmas Day, there were 39 and 25 people were discharged. The figures in front of me show a constant discharge of quite a high number of people. Finally, I would like to say that Hillingdon we are fortunate. Hillingdon is in an excellent place with our discharge. You hear me talk about partnership working all the time. I would just like to thank our social care colleagues who work tirelessly to do this, and our national health colleagues and our voluntary sector. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Palmer. Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Denys? No. Thank you. We will move on to the next question, 8.1, submitted by Councillor Gardner. You may stay seated, Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is for Councillor Lavery. In view of the tragic death of two-year-old Awab Ishaq through living in a home riddled with damp and mould, and the justifiable national criticism of Rochdale Borough-wide housing, could the Cabinet Member please tell the Council what steps have been taken to review the adequacy of Hillingdon's arrangements to deal urgently and efficiently with the constant stream of complaints received by us as councillors on behalf of tenants living in either its own properties, those owned by housing associations, those used by the council for temporary housing of people for which it has a legal responsibility for, including those placed by the council out of borough, and private rented homes in general. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. Councillor Lavery?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Gardner, for your question. The inquest following the tragic death of Awab Ishaq concluded and was reported in November last year and has since dominated the housing headlines. Although the coroner's report has sparked considerable increased concern regarding damp and mould, there was already growing attention to this issue amongst housing associations and providers, and in particular following the Ombudsman report issued in October 21, Spotlight on Damp and Mould. This prompted, prior to this report, and prompted by the introduction of the Homes Fitness for Human Habitation Act 2018, the Council introduced new processes for damp, condensation and mould management in the Council's own housing stock, including empowering operatives to report issues outside of their own trades. Following the Spotlight report, a working group was established to carry out a further review of the Council's approach to damp and mould. The current Hillingdon position was documented against each recommendation made in the report, along with the agreed actions and progress made. There is considerable good practice shown, and I'm not going to list all of it because we might be here a while if I did, including use by operatives of have I a concern surveys, asking operatives to identify damp and mould regardless of why they're in a property. And I think the overall approach can be best summed up by it's everybody's responsibility to report it regardless of why you are there. Since the coroner's report for Awab Ishaq, Hillingdon has established a cross-service group to take forward further actions, both in our own properties and across the social and private sector housing sectors. Regular progress meetings are held and updates are provided to the Strategic Housing Board and me as Cabinet Member for Resident Services and the Deputy Leader of the Council and the Cabinet Member for Property, Highways and Transport. Works for the Council's own stock has in recent years had a strong focus on health and safety, particularly fire safety. The focus is being further extended to include work on damp and mould. We take an evidence-based approach to try and identify those properties that are most likely to be affected. Hillingdon currently has 9,961 tenanted, owned, rented properties. Based on surveys across London, there is an assumed 4.8% prevalence rate for damp and mould. This would give us some 478 households expected to be affected. We are aware that overcrowding increases how susceptible a home is, and is one of the most significant factors for condensation. We are also aware, in the current cost of living crisis, that fuel poverty and poverty in general can have an impact on people living in cold, damp homes. The cross-service group includes colleagues from tenancy management and welfare support to ensure these wider issues are addressed. In Hillingdon, we have identified some specific issues that are particularly associated with damp and mould in our stock, and these are homes that have a solid wall construction, are of non-traditional build, and homes that have metal framed windows. This information has been mapped to inform priorities and is being viewed alongside information regarding occupants to identify risk factors. When inspections are carried out on a council property, any issues coming to light, including damp and mould, that require immediate attention are reported to the repairs team so the relevant job can be raised. The information is also added to our stock database information. There is increasing investment being made in planned works programmes, many of which will bring benefits in terms of reducing the susceptibility to damp and mould. These include the roofing programme, the window replacement programme, the boiler programme, and works to cavity walls, as well as loft insulation. Measures are accompanied by sufficient ventilation, which is critical to prevent damp, especially for those properties that are overcrowded. The Council has successfully bid for funding under the Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund to invest further in insulation, new windows and ventilation, and is working with Warmfront to identify suitable properties for cavity and solid wall insulation. All of these programmes will ensure that properties are well insulated and ventilated and less likely to be affected by damp and mould. The Council is also in the first phase of delivering our regeneration programme on the 2 estates in the Hayes area. To ensure individual cases are identified, we are reviewing our processes from start to finish to make sure they do address damp and mould and that all information is kept in one place so that we can track what is happening. Improvements are also underway in how we communicate with residents regarding damp and mould, including the information on our website, revising the leaflets we provide, and looking again how we raise awareness at tenancy sign-up. Turning to the private sector, the predominant housing tenure in Hillingdon is owner occupation. The private rented sector accounts for some 28,000 properties, including properties owned by housing associations. Again, from London-wide evidence, there is an assumed 8% of these properties may be affected by damp, which would be some 2,200 properties in total. Hillingdon Council complies with the statutory requirements to take action where Category 1 hazards under the Housing, Health and Safety Rating System are found. In addition, we have particular regard to high-scoring Category 2 damp and mould hazards. When a complaint is received, following the gathering information, we will contact the landlord. For serious complaints, we will notify the landlord and interested parties that we intend to carry out an inspection under Section 239 of the Housing Act 2004. For less serious matters, we will provide advice to landlords and tenants on how to proceed. We have recently drafted a private sector housing enforcement policy, which will make it clear that we will take action in relation to Category 1 and 2 hazards. We are able to take action against housing associations, but would encourage all those in housing associations to use the housing association's own complaint process before coming to us. We have advisory information for tenants, and this is currently being reviewed. The private sector housing team have a comprehensive process for requests coming in, and this includes information regarding appropriate questions to ask to respond suitably to damp and mould cases. With regard to temporary accommodation, we have introduced a procurement framework that ensures that all landlords contracted provide accommodation of good standard. This includes accommodation for out-of-borough placements. If a complaint is made, inspection can be arranged quickly to ensure the property is of an appropriate standard. Inquiries and complaints regarding damp and mould. We have reviewed the inquiries on the old ME system, and we have identified there were 318 inquiries from January 2021 to December 2022 out of 21,285 MEs. I will caveat that because the old system, the email-based system, did not have a category for specifically heading up damp and mould, so this has been a bit of a trawl through systems. I will give a plug, therefore, to the new system where, of course, these things will show out much more easily to us. For the last 3 financial years, the private sector team have identified the following complaints that make reference to damp and mould. 2019-20 92, 2020-21 100, 21-22 75. In our own stock, in between April and November of last year, there were 399 reports to the repairs team, most of which have now been completed. The target is to complete an inspection within 10 days. So far this year, we've had 38 new legal disrepair cases, some 30 relate to damp and mould, 15 where it is exclusively that, and another 15 where it's a significant issue. And we've had 15 members' inquiries and complaints regarding damp, most of which have been resolved informally. Damp and mould is also an item on the Resident Services Select Committee in April. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lavery. Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Gardner?
I do indeed. Thank you, first of all, for indulging me on the emails that I send you, Councillor Lavery, because you know I'm probably responsible for a lot of those involving mould. Can we somehow make it essential that all residents that we, as the local authority, placed in both the private sector and RSLs, have a robust and legally binding tenancy agreements? Because I know some of them are a bit wishy-washy at the moment. I've seen some, and you know, I've been in the housing business a long time, and they're not legal. Agreements should be able to stipulate the landlord's responsibility to make sure that the property is up to the decent home standards prior to being let, after being inspected by someone qualified for the job. Not talking about a friend of a friend. And with the section in the agreement that confirms any maintenance issues the private landlords are done swiftly by experienced and qualified contractors. You've seen some of the cases that I've given you, and I'm embarrassed as a councillor to say that we as the authority have placed people in these. So if you could see if you could sort that, I'll give you a list of what I want doing. As you know I will.
Councillor Lavery.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Goddard, for the supplementary. If I may, I will draft a written reply in accordance with the Constitution and get it back to you.
Thank you, Councillor Lavery. Question 8.2, please, submitted by Councillor Curling.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Does the leader agree with me that whilst online self-service can be quick and efficient, there are times, especially in emergencies, that the only way of getting the service that residents need is by talking to a person on the phone, and can he therefore inform council of the telephone waiting times that residents should expect when calling the council or its service partners, especially out of hours? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Curling. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Curling, for your question. In direct answer to your question, yes, I do agree with you. But as you are asking now for matters of detail that relate to a portfolio area of corporate services and transformation, I would invite, with your permission, Madam Mayor, Councillor Mills to provide that detail for you.
Absolutely. Councillor Mills.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor, for his question. Like many organisations, there's been a considerable increase in volumes. And as an example, in the average for the last few months is around 51,000 inquiries coming in all formats to the council. We have been working heavily since autumn, particularly November and December when we launched it, to introduce more voice automated responses to the 28 most frequent type of inquiries, which are across primarily housing or waste services. This has had the effect, which we already believe is quite beneficial, in shifting a significant number of these calls to allow people to go online and self-help and find the answers and make the solutions themselves. The benefit of this, of course, is that this reduces the number of people queuing up and having to wait to get through to one of our actual call handlers. And I'm sure that the member, indeed Madam Mayor, I'm sure that all members would agree that that makes really good sense, because at the moment the average time is about 6 minutes, and by reducing the significant number of people waiting, we would have hopes that that number will start to reduce accordingly. I'm sure that the member is also, Madam Mayor, delighted with the fact that such measures reduces our costs as well as improving our service, but then he would expect that from a Conservative-run council such as ourselves, whose two main facets, of course, are putting the resident first and sound financial management. And this is exactly examples of that. Specifically in terms of out of hours, our main contractor provider that we use is actually exceeding their targets. 92% of the calls that they receive are handled within 1 minute, which we think is exceptionally good, and long may it continue. Having said that, we are aware that in the run-up to Christmas, one of our housing contractors did have problems with their service, and officers became aware of that and took steps to try and remedy and work with the housing contractor, and we are learning the lessons of that particular circumstance. So there will be times when things don't go according to the way in which we would expect them to go, but because, and as the leader of the council said, Madam Mayor, we really do believe that this is important in terms of providing a service to our residents. We will continue to work to see how we can make this better. Ultimately, of course, and I would say this to all councillors, Madam Mayor, if councillors become aware of a problem, the ME system is there to be used, to log it up, to make sure that our officers are aware of it, so that we will take action, and I can assure you that officers are under instruction to take that action straight away, because it is something that we want to make sure is continually improved.
Thank you, Councillor Mills. Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Curling?
I do, Madam Mayor. Councillor Mills has sort of alluded to an answer in his first response. But my supplementary is, does the leader and indeed Councillor Mills agree with me that waiting 1 hour 40 minutes for a service provider's out of hours line to be answered is unacceptable? And what action will he take to ensure that the appropriate service level agreements are not only in place but are monitored and enforced to make sure that the council's vision of putting residents first is fully embedded across the council and its commercial partners?
Thank you, Councillor Curling. Councillor Edwards?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And Councillor Curling, yes, I can confirm that that is unacceptable. And you've already heard from Councillor Mills the actions that are being taken to put that right.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Do you have anything to add, Councillor Mills? No. Thank you. Can we move on to question 8.4, please? Councillor Mathers.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can the Cabinet Member please provide an update on the impact of inflation and other budgetary pressures on capital projects such as leisure facilities and house building?
Thank you, Councillor Mathers. Councillor Goddard?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Mathers, for your question. Inevitably, inflation has had an impact upon costs inherent within our capital programme. In the past year, the cost of building materials and labour costs have been particular areas of pressure. And we've had to manage these not only because of domestic inflationary factors, but also because of the downward pressure on sterling, which has increased the cost of imported goods. The impact of this has been maintained under frequent close scrutiny by senior officers and cabinet members using cost reappraisals. In many instances, inbuilt contingencies within existing cost structures for projects have been used to absorb the pressures. But on occasions, in addition, measures such as the respecification of key components, value engineering, and retendering of contracts have been used to good effect. It should also be noted that a cost contingency of £8.8 million has been built into the General Fund Capital Programme, and that successfully negotiated provisions within our partnership agreement for the Hayes Regeneration Programme have and will continue to serve us to protect us from substantial elements of cost inflation. Madam Mayor, it is notable that as reported in the Month 7 budget report, which was considered by by Cabinet last month, cost variances reported in respect of major capital project expenditure to date were in fact positive in aggregate to the tune of £434,000 in the General Fund, and only negative in the Housing Revenue account to the tune of £158,000. If I then relate this answer to Councillor Mather's specific inquiry about leisure and housing assets, firstly, the new West Drayton and Newsley Leisure Centre is well on track, with total costs by the end of 23-24 projected to be 95% of the total budget, with no new costs pressures identified. The project is on target to be completed by May 2024. The project to relaunch Hillingdon Outdoor Activities Centre is making good progress, with an option agreement now signed and in place for Hillingdon to acquire the site. Our projection for new homes built or acquired within the Housing Revenue account in the current financial year is for 103 units against our budget of 100. The Hayes Town Centre and Avondale Road regeneration is in the early stages of what is a long-term project. It has been slightly delayed due to an extended finalisation process of the contract with our development partner. However, the programme is now progressing well, both in terms of compulsory purchases and the construction project. Madam Mayor, this demonstrates that this Conservative administration's commitment to key projects and illustrates the strength and effectiveness of the controls which we've put in place. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Goddard. Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Mathers?
Yes, Madam Mayor. I'd like to thank the Cabinet Member for their answer. Can the Cabinet Member assure residents that delays to projects or increased costs of capital projects as they occur, such as the delay of HOAC and other things, will not diminish or reduce the size of resident benefits or the projects themselves, including the amount of social housing or affordable housing within building projects?
Thank you, Councillor Mather. Councillor Goddard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The rephasing of capital expenditure, which I suspect is one of the matters that Councillor Mathers is referring to, should not be interpreted as an attempt to either abandon or delay projects. Extensive reviews of our capital projects have been conducted, and if projects are retained within our budgets, that is because we remain wholeheartedly committed to them and because we continue to look to generate the value that is perceived within them. The reason why expenditure on some projects has had to be rephased is because the major constraint of capacity which is currently being experienced by the construction industry. Our ambition and our intention remains to complete these projects as soon as we possibly can. Hillingdon has a very strong capital position. Its assets held are considerably in excess of its borrowings, and therefore it is not suffering from constraints of cash which will prevent us from completing capital projects or from determining the value that we need to generate from them. We will therefore continue to focus our capital budgets towards those areas of investment that are key to our strategy and to the mandate which the electorate has given us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Goddard. We now move on to the motions, and we will start with motion 9.3.
Point of order, Madam Mayor.
Yeah.
Could I ask you to make a ruling under the 6-month rule, considering we had a ULEZ motion on the 14th of July which is 2 days away from its 6-month period, plus another ULEZ motion in November. We've now got a third ULEZ motion within the 6-month period. I would like you to make a ruling.
Yes, can you hold on a minute, Councillor Curling?
Yes, Madam Mayor, just to advise, the 6-month rule is you can't put in a motion about a motion that has been rejected within the previous 6 months. It's okay to put in one on a similar subject following.
So we continue on 9.3. Councillor Mills.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think Councillor Curling's attempt to get this motion stopped tells us everything we need to know. It's the best own goal from the halfway line I think I've ever seen. But please, Councillor Curling, keep trying, because we do enjoy it on this side. But for the avoidance of doubt, this motion is being brought forward for 2 main reasons. One, to ensure that this authority's total opposition to the proposals by the Mayor of London is understood. And the opposition isn't just because it's us. We're moving this opposition on behalf of our residents and the businesses that are going to be severely impacted. And they include your residents as well, Councillor Curling. In fact, probably more of your residents than my residents in terms of demographic. But the other reason why we're moving this motion is so that we can get a report going to Cabinet that will allow us to have the full use of the authority's armoury to be able to deal with this problem. Whether that be a legal response, which we've already started trying to get some process on, whether that be about supporting our community, working with our businesses, or being just political in a wider sense across the whole of London and beyond if necessary. And the reasons for this are quite obvious. What is the impact going to be? It's no good saying, but there's a mitigation scheme, because when you look at the mitigation scheme, it's not worth the paper it's going to be written on. And the charge of £12.50 a day is quite a lot per day. But for a low-paid worker living in Hillingdon, working in Hillingdon, or even more importantly, coming into Hillingdon to provide the important services that everyone in Hillingdon is reliant upon, the services that you lot are prepared to get on picket lines and support at certain times, £12.50 for 5 days mounts up to £3,000 a year. Just remember that figure, £3,000 a year, and that's after tax. So that's why we are going to defend the low-paid workers of this borough who are facing that charge. That's why we're already seeing and already got evidence that people working in the food sector are extremely concerned about the impact. People working in the care and NHS are starting to think, how is this going to affect me? These are the very people that we should be supporting. These are the very people who normally turn out in large numbers to support you. It's now up to us as a council to rally behind them and say to the Mayor, you have this so wrong. And the reason he has it wrong is based on so many different things. Not particularly just the argument about air quality. Indeed, air quality in this borough, he's taken an overall look at the airport and said Hillingdon is a bad case. Well, surprise, surprise, Madam Mayor. We have an airport that causes us immense problems, all of which we are known. But it is not consistent throughout the borough. What we need to make sure comes to the Cabinet report, the details which need to be worked up. And whilst the transport input will be no doubt very important and significant, it won't just be that. It will be about what is our legal response. It will be how do we work with the large retailers who are already contacting us and saying we need to be doing something. How do we work with fellow councils across London who are going to be impacted? And how we actually work as a coalition, community, business and politics, to bring an argument forward. But the problem is, we already have an aggressive response from the Mayor of London through the TfL. He's not interested in a chat. He's not interested in negotiations. He doesn't want dialogue. He doesn't want any more discussion. He doesn't want any constructive talks. He just wants to implement. And our officers are being bombarded already by the TfL about we're coming with our signage and we're coming with our cameras. We will reach out directly to the residents of this borough most likely to be impacted and let them know very clearly where the blame lies for this. So, this is a rallying call. Hillingdon Conservatives put residents first. Hillingdon Conservatives will support our residents. Are you with us all the way, including saying Sadiq Khan must not be re-elected as mayor, because if he does, it continues? Are you on the side of residents, or are you flip-floppers?
Point of order, Madam Mayor. Point of order, Madam Mayor. Thank you. Is this motion not out of order in the fact that it's against the budget and policy framework, in that it should be put at the budget setting meeting of council where it calls for appropriate budget?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This motion doesn't actually propose any sum of funding for this, so that will be down to the Cabinet to decide, and that will obviously, they will then recommend that that's built into the budget motion at the next council meeting.
Thank you. Is that seconded?
Madam Mayor, I second and reserve my right.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Councillor Curling.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move this amendment in an attempt to secure a true cross-party approach rather than party political posturing that we've just witnessed. It is often easy to get caught up in the local scene and not recognise the big picture. Whilst London has its congestion charge, low emission zone and ultra low emission zone, all of which have been embraced by London mayors from both parties, remember it was Mayor Johnson who initiated the ULEZ, but Mayor Khan who implemented it. In other cities such as Bath, Birmingham, Bradford, Bristol, Portsmouth, Manchester, Sheffield and Tyneside, they all have clean air zones as part of the government's framework. The government's policy paper states that a clean air zone refers to an area where a local authority applies charges using powers under the Transport Act to deliver nitrous dioxide reductions. Michael Gove's Clean Air Strategy also states the plan for tackling roadside nitrogen dioxide identifies local authorities which have been directed to bring roadside pollution within legal limits, and that they are required to develop local plans including a clean air zone. So you see, Madam Mayor, the London ULEZ is not unique, and it is in line with government policy. Indeed, had the Mayor of London not pursued the ULEZ, it would appear that the government would have required him to develop a clean air zone as part of its framework. The Labour Group's opposition to the extension of ULEZ is well documented, despite the scurrilous politicking of a recent Conservative leaflet. We recognise the desperate need to reduce air pollution, and our concerns have always been about the financial impact on residents with the lowest incomes and our local businesses that have suffered through COVID and now face a recession. We believe that the opposition to ULEZ should be constructive and practical, and that any potential legal challenge would also effectively need to challenge the government policy. This is especially pertinent to Hillingdon, as Hillingdon is identified as having illegal levels of pollution, which has been the basis of our case in opposing the third runway. The Labour Group also cannot agree to an uncosted budget commitment in this motion, especially when we face the most challenging budgets, one of the most challenging budgets for some time. I would therefore urge every member in this chamber to put party politics to one side and vote in favour of this amendment. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Curling. Is this amendment to the motion seconded?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I second Councillor Curling, as he has yet again suggested a very sensible and mature amendment to a motion, clearly putting our residents first. But the question is, can our friends on the other side manifest similar maturity and accept it? It is a matter of record that Hillingdon Labour Group is against the ULEZ expansion. However, I believe that the Mayor of London's ULEZ expansion should neither be viewed in isolation from the national net zero agenda and nor used for a narrow-minded political point scoring. Madam Mayor, it should be seen in the context of promises our national leaders, including the former Prime Minister and the current MP from Uxbridge and South Ruislip, have made at various COP summits. Perhaps a reminder of Mr. Johnson's speech at Glasgow can take the obsession of the ruling benches away from the London Mayor for a while. At COP26, besides mentioning James Bond and belching cows, the local MP had said, "We in the developed world have a responsibility. The children who will judge us are the children who are yet to be born and their children. We can't let them down," and so on and so forth. It will also be worthwhile to note that Prime Minister Sunak at COP27 said that rising energy prices across the world are not a reason to go slow on climate change, they are a reason to act faster. So all those promises will be nothing but blah, 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 to coin Mr. Johnson's phrase, if the London Mayor doesn't do his bit to save the planet. While we agree that ULEZ expansion is not suited for our residents, and we need to find a solution, we must also realize that public consultation is not a referendum, and hence whatever the results, they are non-binding. Therefore, I urge that when the Council formulates a plan of action to oppose the ULEZ decision using taxpayers' hard-earned money, unless of course they have a magic money tree now, it considers ensuring that we are able to secure the best possible financial and other support deals from the TfL as well as from the national government funding, so that the effects of ULEZ expansion can be best mitigated, not only for our most vulnerable residents, but for our everyday working people as well. And so, let's get to work with all the creativity and imagination and goodwill we possess. Let's put our residents right at the heart of everything we do in word and practice. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Call. Councillor Burrow.
Actually, Madam Mayor, can I just jump in for a quick second, just to confirm that we're now debating the amendment as set out on pages 4 and 5, and anybody who's indicated to speak on the main motion, which actually you did at the time, Councillor Rose, but I'm assuming you're now speaking on the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you for clarification. Madam Mayor, this is like deja vu. Only a few weeks ago I was standing to oppose the last minute back of the postage stamp amendment to the Conservative Group's motion from the Labour Group concerning ULEZ, and here I am again. The amendment, again, I'm afraid to say, although released earlier, so well done, is still nonsense, as it is factually incorrect on various points. To start, it states has unanimous Labour Group support. However, I know for a fact one Belmore Ward councillor, Councillor Bassett, put on their Twitter feed that ULEZ is a fantastic idea. So interesting when a vote is required. However, there is no evidence of any bus route improvements promised as part of the Mayor's ULEZ expansion. Why? If he wants people out of vehicles, he should provide the adequate transport infrastructure. But of course, this expansion is not about improving infrastructure. It's about making as much money as he can, which I might add is costing an extortionate amount of money for the cameras and signs required to implement it. And remember, the Labour Group voted against better bus routes for our Hillingdon residents at the last council meeting. There was also the reference to not having a choice of non-charging clean air zones, which I'm afraid again is factually not true. As Section 6 of the Government's Clean Air Zone Policy Framework, updated 6th of October, states that if an authority can show that a non-chargeable zone can be at least as effective, then this should be preferred. But the biggest issue I have with this amendment relates to the scrappage scheme, which the Labour Group obviously think is fantastic. The Labour Mayor is doing this, but really, the reality is a pittance being offered as part of this scheme is pretty useless, especially if on a low income, because what is on offer, you will not be able to purchase a vehicle that is ULEZ compliant anyway. Therefore, Madam Mayor, the only thing that should be scrapped for the reasons I've outlined is this motion, but mainly for the residents of the borough, the expansion of ULEZ. The scheme set out by a Labour Mayor who clearly does not put residents first, unlike the Conservatives in Hillingdon. So we on this side of the chamber will be opposing this amendment. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Burrows. Are there any other speakers on the amendment? Councillor Edwards.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. To me, this amendment sounds very much like the retreat by the Labour group from their previous unambiguous opposition to the Mayor's extension of ULEZ to Hillingdon. For them to try and join the Right Honourable Michael Gove in responsibility for the expansion of ULEZ to Hillingdon is a stretch too far. But by raising clear air zones, our Labour colleagues have helpfully drawn attention to the work that the government has been doing and continues to do to improve air quality. I certainly hadn't expected that endorsement from the opposition. But I dare say that my pleasure will not be shared by the Mayor of London, as I believe he has fallen short of one of the government's requirements when implementing a clear air zone, which is that the local authority will, and I quote, need extensive engagement and consultation with neighbouring authorities. We are now following this up with the Mayor requesting evidence of his compliance. The assertion that the Mayor of London does not have the choice of a non-charging clear air zone is factually wrong. The Borough Solicitor advises that Section 6 of the Government's Clean Air Zone Policy Framework, updated last October, states that if an authority can show that a non-chargeable zone can be at least as effective, then this should be preferred. I'm pleased that the Councillor Curling mentioned Greater Manchester in his speech, and he might wish to consult with the Labour Mayor, Andy Burnham up there, who is proposing such a non-charging scheme, noting that the time now isn't right to put further charge on residents. You can hear the fence creaking, Madam Mayor, as the opposition try to perch on it by moving this amendment. By agreeing to it would require the effective abandonment by this council of the opposition to the expansion of ULEZ and the abandonment of our residents that have placed their trust in us to act in their interest. Whilst Labour seek to claim that they have the moral high ground by urging us to be above party politics, it is they that have been pressured by their party into a U-turn whilst we stand firm with our residents. Today, Hillingdon, jointly with the London boroughs of Bexley, Bromley and Harrow, served a letter before action on the Mayor of London, requesting that he demonstrates the lawfulness of his proposals and the data behind them. Until we have seen compelling evidence to the contrary, it remains our position that this scheme will not translate successfully to outer London boroughs, and the negative impact to local households and businesses will far outweigh the negligible air quality benefits. Madam Mayor, while Labour appear to have U-turned, we continue to put our residents first. We will not be supporting this amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Are there any other speakers? No, so we will go to Councillor Douglas Mills for the right.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do like it when the opposition move amendments to motions that I move. It gives me another chance to emphasise a few points. I also think it's quite telling, Madam Mayor, that when the Leader of the Opposition gets up and says in moving his amendment, oh, we shouldn't try to make this party political, who believes that? It is entirely party political because we have a party political system and we have a party political mayor in London who has no interest whatsoever with Hillingdon, yet alone most of outer London. So, let's not be fooled by that. I will repeat, Madam Mayor, for the avoidance of doubt, and in case members of the opposition in particular didn't quite understand what we were saying, the Mayor is not interested in further dialogue. The Mayor does not want any more discussions. He has made his mind up. He is coming to Hillingdon, he has sent his people out, and he is saying, we are going to put our signs and our cameras up in your place, and we're going to charge your residents from August this year full stop. Now, I noticed, and again, when Councillor Curling has the final say on his amendment, I look forward to him saying, we recognise it is serious, we recognise our residents are really going to suffer, and we recognise that the only way that we are going to be able to persuade Mayor Khan to change his tune is that we have to say to him, not that we're just in opposition, but that we can no longer support you in Hillingdon politically. We will have to tell our residents politically that you cannot be trusted in this borough and that people cannot vote Labour at a mayoral election. That is what it's about. I also wait with anticipation for the details and the routes of the extra buses that Peter Curling is aware of that are coming to Hillingdon, which no one else is aware of. Because I have my pass ready to join him on the extra bus. Where is it, Councillor Curling? Stop dreaming, get realistic. It is political. We have to stand for our residents. If you won't do it, don't worry, because we will be doing it for you.
Thank you, Councillor Mills. Councillor Curling.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, if that wasn't an election speech, I don't know what was. It is always great when Councillor Mills gets animated like that, because it does mean that we've hit a certain nerve that's brought out that reaction. So I feel very confident that we've done our job here in this chamber today. I would say that to get bus routes here, we need to actually speak to the mayor. Perhaps he doesn't want to speak to us, but if he has to put up with that sort of diatribe, then no wonder he doesn't want to speak to us. Just a little bit of clarification about Councillor Burrow's quote from the section of the Clean Air Zone framework. When I read the update, the October update of the Clean Air Zone frame document, the passage that Councillor Burrows read out is what was taken out in October 2022. Prior to that, there was an option to have a non-charging clean air zone, but on the 6th of October 2022, the government removed that from the document. The document is online, so it can be checked.
Madam Mayor, the Borough Solicitor is available to advise on a matter of law.
Madam Mayor, thank you. I did look that up today. If there was a wrong, if my reading of the updated guidance is wrong, then that is my error, and that's solely my error. But from what I saw today, that guidance was updated on the 6th of October. I'm happy to take that with any councillor afterwards, after the meeting as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much for clarifying that. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Curling. Thank you, Councillor Edwards. We will now be voting on the amendment. So voting on the amendment. Those in favour of the amendment, please raise your hands. Those against the amendment? It is against the amendment. The amendment doesn't go through. We will now go back to the former motion and back to Councillor Bianco.
At the moment, we have no other speakers on the...
Okay, thank you. So, Councillor Cawthorne.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. To most people these days, the existence of the GLA and the office of London Mayor is now accepted as a fact of life. But for me, the advent of ULEZ serves as a reminder of why I voted against establishing them in Blair's 1997 referendum, and indeed why Margaret Thatcher abolished the GLC back in the 80s. Residents in the ward of Rysit, which we are proud to represent, do not, by and large, easily become exercised by things. After all, they've borne with the grim reality of HS2 for years, with a very British stoicism alongside residents in other wards. But to a man and woman, everyone we have spoken to, and among those who have attended our surgeries, the anger and outrage at the expansion of ULEZ is palpable. Spurious attempts to brandish environmental credentials to give this misguided policy a fig leaf of legitimacy cannot obscure the fact that this is really nothing more than a cynical cash grab, with Sadiq Khan seeing Outer London, as did Ken Livingstone before him, as a cash cow. This will not hit so much the better off, of course, who usually have the means and the wherewithal to get round such things, but ordinary people who are more likely to own vehicles which are not compliant. TfL's own estimates suggest that over 500,000 cars in Greater London don't meet ULEZ standards. Less well-paid employees in the health and care sector, the service sector, the many people who volunteer to help improve the lives of others across this borough, and charity workers stand to be affected. Madam Mayor, ULEZ is nothing less than an attack on the very fabric of our civil society and much else beyond, with significant ramifications in all walks of life. Madam Mayor, residents need cars given the extent of public transport in some locations in this borough. And some residents are telling us they don't know how they're going to be able to get round to fulfil the basic day-to-day activities due to prohibitive costs. And of course, those who are thinking of selling non-compliant vehicles are telling us that they've nosedived in value. Madam Mayor, on this side of the chamber, we have never been shy of opposing national party policy where we deem it as necessary, as can be seen with Heathrow expansion and HS2. Tonight, we've challenged Labour members to join us in standing up to Sadiq Khan over ULEZ expansion. It is they, after all, who like to present themselves as the party of the working man and woman, champions of the proletarian cause and the less well-off and the disadvantaged. We hear it all the time. Well, we'll see about that this evening, won't we, Madam Mayor? But either way, we will fight this pernicious tax with a coalition of the willing, with all the means at our disposal, and make sure residents of this borough do not forget its origins, nor the complicity or the weasel words of the members opposite. I support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Cawthorne. Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As a Conservative councillor in Hayes and Harlington, I am delighted to use my maiden speech to speak in support of this motion, at a time when many residents in the south of the borough, and indeed the borough as a whole, feel betrayed by the Labour Mayor of London and his efforts to tax the poorest in our community during the cost of living crisis. Madam Mayor, the Mayor of London's ULEZ charge is nothing more than a tax toll to fill his ever-growing black hole thanks to his financial mismanagement of London. A desperate plan for a desperate mayor to unveil his stealth tax in eco-gimmicks without addressing the real concerns for the health of outer London residents. Indeed, let's not forget that as Transport Secretary under the last Labour government, he fully backed the expansion of Heathrow up until 2015. Not much of a track record to be proud of when it comes to tackling air pollution. Madam Mayor, I recently surveyed hundreds of cars within my own ward of Charville and found that 1 in 10 cars would be affected by the Labour Mayor's ULEZ plans. I also found that nearly 10% of non-compliant cars would be residents over the age of 65. Is this really what the Labour Mayor wants to do? Remove the ability of elderly residents to socialise and move freely around our borough? Can you imagine our residents having to sit on a bench outside a supermarket waiting for their transport for hours at a time, or missing their GP appointments due to transport strikes when they have a perfectly good car at home which they cannot afford to use due to Mayor Khan's new tax? Madam Mayor, I find it outrageous that the Labour Mayor continues to push ahead with his ULEZ scheme and has failed to take advice from local authorities such as Hillingdon. As previously mentioned by my colleague Councillor Bianco, there is a number of alternate options the Labour Mayor could have put in place other than ULEZ. Currently, as it stands, residents of Hillingdon with non-ULEZ compliant cars will have to pay £12.50 a day to drive to work on Monday, £12.50 to go to a hospital appointment on Tuesday, £12.50 to go to the supermarket on Wednesday, £12.50 to visit a family member on Thursday, £12.50 to visit friends on Friday, and unlike the Craig David song, our residents will not be chilling on Sunday. They will be receiving a bill of £62.50 thanks to the Labour Mayor's new charge. As I've said before, Madam Mayor, a desperate plan for a desperate mayor. Madam Mayor, I am proud to support the residents of Charville, and I am proud to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Councillor Gohill.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm happy to support this motion. This is my third time speaking in this chamber on ULEZ. We want to send a clear message. The expansion of ULEZ into the outer London boroughs must not happen. A £12.50 a day charge to those who just want to conduct their daily business is grossly unfair and affects the worst off disproportionately. It's no surprise that the people of Hillingdon have to rely on their cars more, as because of the Mayor's lack of investment in Hillingdon, we simply do not have the same transport options as central London. Let me give a clear-cut example of this. A journey from the north of the borough, say Northwood Station, to the south, Heathrow, takes roughly 30 minutes by car. That same journey takes roughly 1 hour and 15 minutes by public transport. The equivalent journey in central London, in, let's say, the London Borough of Westminster, where the northernmost point is Kilburn Park Station, down to Pimlico Station, takes again roughly 30 minutes by car. But the same journey by public transport takes just 20 minutes. Now, London air quality is very important, but the example I gave shows that a one-size-fits-all approach doesn't work for all of London, and therefore ULEZ expansion must be reconsidered. By expanding ULEZ, not only is Sadiq Khan impacting the worst off in the borough, in the middle of a cost of living crisis, but he's impacting the quality of life for Hillingdon residents also. And we know why the Labour Mayor of London wants to expand ULEZ. It's nothing to do with air quality. It's about making money to fund his poor financial mismanagement of TfL. In October, TfL's board was told that ULEZ earnings were £182 million less than expected. So he's expanding ULEZ to make up for the losses at the expense of our residents and at the cost of £400 million of taxpayers' money to install these cameras and signs. Residents will do well to remember this when they get their council tax bill in March and see the GLA precept increase once again. We also know that Sadiq Khan is whipping Labour councillors across London to support the ULEZ expansion, regardless of their opinions on it. But despite this, I request to the councillors on the opposite side to do the right thing, to support this motion and let us tackle this for the better of the residents across Hillingdon. Madam Mayor, I'm happy to support this motion.
Thank you. Councillor Shandell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wasn't put down to speak on this motion, but as a local businessman, I mean, we've got to really forget the political part of it. I disagree with one thing that Councillor Mills said. He mentioned a figure of, I think, £3,000. It's actually £4,400 for people who actually go out about doing their business 7 days a week. So I get what you say. It's just a horrendous amount. I mean, how can the mayor justify charging this amount? You know, if you said £1 a day, you know, people will take a possible say, no, it's possible. But at £12.50, how are families going to cope on this? You know, how are, you know, people who are employed in business, how are they going to cope? They're just not going to. It's just a figure he's plucked out of, I don't know where he's plucked out. I just want to say, on all sides, we should look at this in what it is presented. It's a huge tax, a tax that we cannot afford. And we just got to say to Mr. Khan is no. I fully support this motion. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Mann.
Madam Mayor, since the council elections in May 2022, this is now the third full council meeting where a motion has been put forward with the mention of ULEZ expansion. The first motion in July last year was unanimously agreed by both parties, and Hillingdon Labour Group welcomed the administration's change to a lobbying council. Hillingdon Labour Group urged the council through a proposed amendment of the second motion in November 22 to ensure that the council lobbied the government, which had provided inadequate funding for TfL, as well as the Mayor of London. The funding formula needed to be changed by the government. The unfortunate but rather unsurprising voting down of this amendment by Hillingdon Conservatives was a clear indication that their mindset was not to put the residents first, but to turn this into a political point-scoring exercise. Madam Mayor, it is abundantly clear that the government has failed to adequately fund TfL and has forced through unfair, unnecessary and damaging conditions to funding deals, which were essential to keeping Londoners moving during the pandemic. Unsurprisingly again, these conditions were imposed by former Prime Minister and current MP for Uxbridge and South Ruislip, Mr. Boris Johnson. The motion put forward today specifies the allocation of an appropriate budget, seemingly with no strings attached. A Hillingdon Conservative-run council that has no money for early year centres, no Cllr money for local schools, no money to rectify the changes to the Stop and Shop scheme, now all of a sudden have a blank cheque in opposition to ULEZ. Unless Santa Claus has delivered the council with a sack full of notes over Christmas, may I ask, where will the money be coming from? Madam Mayor, the Hillingdon Labour Group is against the ULEZ expansion, but we must formulate a cross-party plan to ensure we lobby TfL and the Secretary of State for Transport, whoever that might be at the moment, considering they keep reshuffling every month. If the motion truly wants to put residents first, then we must request a better settlement for TfL. In addition, Hillingdon's air quality plan specifies the need to incentivise ULEZ vehicles as much as possible. The proposed motion is therefore against Hillingdon's own action plan statements, probably the best own goal of the day so far. This chamber should not keep playing petty politics with repeated motions and repeated speeches. It's clear Hillingdon Conservatives want to put their party before the residents. They're running out of money, running out of ideas, running out of motions, and naturally running out of seats in the next chamber in the next election.
Can I stop you there, please? You've run out of time. Thank you very much. Kindly sit down.
Madam Mayor, I do not support the motion.
Sit down. Thank you. Thank you. Are there any other speakers? No? So we go back to Councillor Bianco. You reserved your right to reply, so you may reply.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Labour's answer to everything. Ask the government for more money. Doesn't matter where it comes from, doesn't matter whose taxes have to rise, doesn't matter if borrowing costs go up, just get more money from the government. Councillor Mann at least has accepted that this is nothing more than a tax. Madam Mayor, as everyone will know, I have already spoken twice on motions that I put forward against the ULEZ, and it's been interesting to watch how Labour have moved back and forth on this matter. They supported us the first time out, but then were pulled into line by London Labour, who told them to support the Mayor. And that is what they've been doing since. This latest iteration, their latest amendment, was simply to kick everything into the long grass and to encourage us to speak to a Mayor who clearly doesn't want to speak to us. Mr. Mayor, Madam Mayor, I beg your pardon. This scheme is not about pollution, as I have said. There is only pollution in this borough near Heathrow, and this tax is going to do nothing to help that. It's not about reducing vehicle numbers. Indeed, I read a report only yesterday that latest numbers of roads, of car users within the ULEZ, the existing ULEZ scheme, has gone up. So it's simply about raising tax, and in this case, raising tax for those who can least afford it. And as has already been said, many of those would have been his voters in the past. Imposing this tax of 3,000 or 4,400, depending on how many days a week we think people will be using their cars on our least well-off, at a time of significant financial pressure, will not endear him to many of his supporters, but hey, his loss is our gain. Madam Mayor, if the proposed ULEZ scheme is not enough, we have recently heard that his precept is going to rise by 10% this year, double the rate of any London borough can charge, and it seems that even this is not enough. How long after the ULEZ scheme is extended to the rest of London will congestion charge follow? The Mayor has tried to soften this blow with a few sops. Extra bus routes. Well, you may recall that at one of the last motion was that we asked the Mayor for extra bus routes, specifically in this borough, and have I had a response? No. Madam Mayor, his scrappage scheme is a complete waste of time. 400,000 applied to the last scheme, less than a quarter were given a grant. And can you tell me, as others have said, where you can buy a car that is compliant with ULEZ for £2,000? Madam Mayor, the ULEZ is the wrong thing for Hillingdon, the wrong thing for out of London, and the wrong thing for our hard-pressed residents and those who come into this borough to work. We will oppose it as vigorously as we can to stop this flawed tax from falling onto the shoulders of our residents. Madam Mayor, that is how you put residents first.
Thank you, Councillor Bianco. We are now voting on Councillor Mills. I do apologise. How could I forget? Councillor Mills.
Madam Mayor, tempted that I am to say that most things have been said, I won't. We had such high hopes that the newcomers into the Labour ranks in Hillingdon would add a lot more analysis than they've been able to demonstrate so far tonight. The reality is that the danger are at the gates of Hillingdon now, and as we move towards August, they will be upon us, but they won't just be upon us sitting here in this chamber. And I repeat, absolutely for clarity, it is our residents, and in particular those who are on the lowest paid, who are facing the biggest charge. And Councillor Chandel is absolutely right. If you are a small business person trying to run a business most days of the week, then the charge is going to be even bigger for you. But then we know that the Mayor of London has even less regard for those who are trying to run their own businesses. So we stand here with a choice. Do we actually unite and agree to get a cabinet report that maximises our opportunities to be able to join with others to make sure that Sadiq Khan gets the message, his scheme is wrong, it's outrageous, and it is very costly to the very people we should be supporting? Or are they going to dither and pretend to be? As I said before, you can't flip-flop on this. This is about total opposition. They did vote against our proposals for improved buses, so I do look forward to Councillor Curling when getting an extra bus route for us and all the influence that he has. But there is no doubt that the strings of Labour groups across outer London are being pulled elsewhere, and they're being pulled in line. Because one of the outer London boroughs that we were talking to were very sympathetic to the arguments, wanted to join us, then all of a sudden, oh no, we better not do that. They happen to be a Labour-controlled authority. Isn't that suspicious? But I want to appeal to the residents who may be watching this, and to the residents who will be reading Hillingdon People, and to the residents who will see our leaflets in the next few months. If we don't oppose this, it won't be because of our lack of trying, but it may be because under Councillor Curling and the Hillingdon Labour Group, they prefer to be known as the Labour Party that introduced a £3,000 working tax in support of Sadiq Khan on the residents of Hillingdon. That's your choice. We will make sure your people, your residents, know every one of you who voted for that, regardless of how you're voting. And yes, I've heard it every year in the 40 years I've been here. Oh, wait till the next election and we'll kick you out. Bring it on. Every time. You lose, we win.
Thank you, Councillor Mills. We will now be voting. No, we won't yet. Sorry.
The Borough Solicitor would like to just...
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. In view of the doubt that was raised about the advice I gave earlier, I've had that advice double-checked. The advice I gave to the leader and members earlier was correct, and the version of the government guidance that was quoted earlier on in the debate was correct. That paragraph 6, as read out by the leader, is the current version. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much for clarifying that. Now.
Madam Mayor, sorry, point of order. Could I ask Councillor Curling then to publicly apologise to me because he said that I got that factually incorrect?
Madam Mayor, that's not actually a point of order. That's a point of personal explanation where you feel a member has misinterpreted something you said in an earlier speech. Whether he makes an apology or not, that's entirely up to Councillor Curling.
Councillor Curling.
Just for clarification, I don't doubt the Borough Solicitor for one second, and I really don't want to sort of bring the borough solicitor into this. But in one of the speeches that I was preparing, because I was running out of time, I edited it out, but I actually had the paragraph where it said, lifted, copied and pasted from the online document that actually said the option for a non-charging zone had been removed. So I think there is probably more of a...
Yeah, I think because it's not part of this, so I think we'll leave it now, and I think we have had enough debate and enough discussion, so thank you, Councillor Curling. Right, I would like now to vote, please, on the motion. Yes, absolutely, recorded vote. So can we have a recorded vote on the motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A recorded vote has been called for. So I will be asking each member in turn if you're voting for the motion 9.3 as set out on the top of page 4, moved by Councillor Douglas Mills, seconded by Councillor Bianco, against or abstaining. Councillor Abbey.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Banerjee. Councillor Bassett.
Against.
Councillor Bennett. Councillor Batt. Councillor Bianco. Councillor Bridges. Councillor Burles.
Against.
Councillor Burrows. Councillor Rita Chamdal. Councillor Roy Chamdal.
For.
Councillor Chapman. Councillor Chubadar. Councillor Cawthorne. Councillor Curling. Councillor Davies. Councillor Denys. Councillor Dott. Councillor Edwards. Councillor Farley. Cllr Gardner.
Against the ULEZ.
Against the motion. Can I clarify, Councillor Gardner, are you voting for the motion or against the motion? Against the motion. Thank you. Councillor Gaelic. Councillor Garg. Councillor Gill. Councillor Goddard. Councillor Gohill. Councillor Higgins. Councillor Islam. Councillor Judge.
Against.
Councillor Kaur.
Against.
Thank you. No, it's not a game show. I can take the amended vote. Councillor Lakmana. Councillor Lavery. Councillor Lewis. Councillor Makwana. Councillor Mand. Councillor Mathers. Councillor D. Mills. Councillor R. Mills. Councillor Money. Councillor Nelson. Councillor Nelson West. Councillor O'Brien. Councillor Palmer. Councillor Punja. Councillor Riley. Councillor Sansapuri. Councillor Singh. Councillor Smallwood. Councillor Sullivan. Councillor Tuckwell. Mr. Deputy Mayor. Madam Mayor. Thank you, Madam Mayor. That motion is carried, 30 votes to 22.
Thank you very much. We will now move on to 9.1 on the order sheet. Councillor Curling.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The pressure on organisations to pay their fair share of tax has never been stronger. Polling from the Institute of Business Ethics finds that corporate tax avoidance has, since 2013, been the clear number one concern of the British public when it comes to business conduct. 2/3 of people believe that the government and local councils should at least consider a company's ethics and how they pay their tax, as well as value for money and quality of service provided when awarding contracts to companies. Around 17.5% of public contracts in the UK have been won by companies with links to tax havens, and it has been estimated that losses from multinational profit sharing, just one form of tax avoidance, could be costing the UK some £17 billion per annum in lost corporate tax revenues. All of this should be of concern to each and every one of us in this chamber, as we are custodians of council taxpayers' money and spend a great deal of our time trying to ensure that their money is spent wisely. We should also be doing all we can to promote a fair tax ethos. We should ensure that Hillingdon is recognised as having a clear financial culture that shuns the practice of tax avoidance. Paying tax is often presented as a burden, but it shouldn't be. Tax enables us to provide services from education, health and social care to flood defence, roads, policing and defence. It also helps counter financial inequalities and rebalance distorted economies. As recipients of significant public funding, we should lead the way in the promotion of exemplary tax conduct. By ensuring that contractors are paying their fair share of tax or refusing to go along with offshore tax dodging when buying land or property. However, UK procurement law significantly restricts us in either penalising poor tax conduct or rewarding good tax conduct when we're buying goods or services. Madam Mayor, in moving this motion, I hope to gain cross-party support to request that the Finance and Corporate Services Select Committee carry out a review into how Hillingdon can be recognised as a leading fair tax borough. This would then allow for the Select Committee to make various recommendations to Cabinet on how we can ensure that Hillingdon is doing everything that we can to ensure that local taxpayers' money is not only used wisely, but also we are doing everything we can to ensure that our suppliers and partners are responsible with their tax affairs too. Madam Mayor, I so move.
Thank you, Councillor Curling. Is that seconded? Councillor Mathers?
Madam Mayor, I second and reserve my right.
Thank you. Any other speakers? We have Councillor Goddard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I speak in opposition to this motion. Whilst I'm certain that we would all like to see a situation where enterprises all bear their fair share of taxation, in practice what we would discover is that the definition of what a fair share of taxation actually represents would vary from one of us to another. The vision for fair taxation is principally promoted by the Fair Tax Foundation. It is clear that the Foundation pursues an idealistic vision that is built on massive subjectivity and which defies practical implementation. The Fair Tax Foundation urges local authorities to identify and outlaw corporate tax avoidance. Madam Mayor, we must remember that tax evasion is illegal. On the other hand, tax avoidance can and usually does involve taxpayers arranging their affairs in a lawful manner in such a way as to minimise their tax liabilities. Whilst it's certainly the case that His Majesty's Revenue and Customs do successfully challenge some tax avoidance measures, it is without doubt that many others do receive acceptance. Who are we to pass judgment on such a wide range of measures? If many of them are, as I've said, accepted by HMRC, how can we therefore find fault with them? The Fair Tax Foundation frequently lapses into phrases such as good tax conduct. How are we to judge that in others? Let us assume for a moment that we were to build in the principles espoused by the Fair Tax Foundation into our procurement processes. How could we possibly identify and assess good or not so good tax conduct? HMRC do not maintain a public register of tax corrections or misdemeanours. Many breaches of tax legislation interpretation thereof are settled privately by HMRC with the taxpayer out of court. A convenient approach might be for a local authority to seek only to engage with those companies who've signed up to the Foundation's Fair Tax Mark. This would also prove to be entirely impractical, as current adoption amongst commercial enterprises is so slight, and indeed, as far as I can determine, does not include any of the commercial organisations with whom we currently do business. Another option might be to ask procurement teams to carry out tax diligence on every applicant. Clearly, that is impractical. Even if we were to resolve this challenge, with the exception of criminal prosecutions, current procurement legislation does not empower a council to use this information as the basis for refusing the contract. Indeed, this motion acknowledges that fundamental flaw, so why pursue it? The reality is that the pursuit of the principles promulgated by the Fair Tax Foundation cannot be meaningful at a practical level. In the absence of legislation that defines acceptable tax conduct and empowers councils to deny contracts on the basis of bad tax practice, this is offering fine words and nothing more. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Goddard. Councillor Riley.
How to make a speech on tax exciting. Right, here goes. Madam Mayor, this is a Cuprinol post-eventu motion. In other words, it doesn't say what it says on the tin or doesn't do what it says on the tin, because you only have to look at lines 7 to 9 of this motion to realise that this is a self-defeating motion. For those people who do not have, Madam Mayor, the words in front of them, I'll summarise. What this motion says is, please do this, we know you can't, but give it a go anyway. And that is no basis for a motion. In addition, Madam Mayor, I am very grateful to Councillor Curling because he's made me go and look and read the procurement bill. 116 clauses, 13 parts and 11 schedules. It was riveting. But the main point about it in regard to this motion is that the basis of this motion is nowhere to be seen in the procurement bill at all, or indeed in the guidance notes, which also went on and on and on. But, Madam Mayor, more especially, and with the greatest of respect, it is not for this council to give my committee ever more work. We have a perfectly decent, robust method of getting our work and going through our work programme and getting ideas and things for it. And indeed, it is of great note that my Labour colleagues have not raised this as an issue during the course of, yes, we have been working on procurement for the last many months. And as a specific issue, I don't think it has been raised in that way. And why? Because in reality, this is a generic transport house central control think tank issue that they've been told to raise. And the problem with it is this. It's not enforceable, it doesn't make any sense, it's not effective, and the reality would be that we would be asking our very hard-working finance and procurement officers to go away and spend hundreds of hours chasing HMRC geese that don't exist, and we're not going to do it. We employ very practical policies on this side of the chamber. This authority and this administration do what residents want. We put residents first and we do things practically. We don't waste our time, we don't waste our officers' time, and I oppose this motion, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Riley. Are there any other speakers? No, we go back to Councillor Mathers. You reserved your right to speak. You may speak.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I second this motion because it was fairness at heart. It has fairness in the very core of it. When faced with a crisis, be it a world at war, a cost of living crisis, or a pandemic, the public are at their best when they feel they are all in it together. In contrast, the public feel cheated and angry with unfairness. They feel completely and deeply disgusted at selfishness and greed. Selfishness such as being caught at a party during COVID, or when companies don't pay their equal share of tax on profits. Without fair tax on these profits, when tax is due, we the public feel cheated, as tax which pays for services both nationally and locally, tax that's very much needed. It means that our things such as our bin collections, social services and libraries, which local people rely on, can be put at risk, or saving cuts or costs need to be reduced. This motion asks that the Hillingdon Council play their small part in ensuring that this corner of the world has fairness at its heart, particularly at all of its financial transactions. We are spending taxpayers' money, and we must do with a clear conscience. It is easy to take the easy route when procuring services, which we are reviewing at the moment, and I'm always happy to raise fair tax within these reviews. But it needs to be council's heart, challenging companies and procurement and other different processes that we have that really brings fairness to the fore for our residents. We do not want to be complicit with companies that are avoiding tax. It is easy to ignore it, particularly in a financial climate when inflation rises have put pressure on Hillingdon, and that's why we're seeing things such as 30% price hikes in fees and charges, as proposed in the budget papers. But despite these challenges, let us think practically and look at ways in which we can lobby or explore, looking at the bigger picture of things to consider. With councils such as Hillingdon being able to and willing to keep their procurement and commission services to account in this way, we can make a difference. Finally, this motion asks for Hillingdon Council to take a lead in ensuring appropriate tax conduct in procuring services. Getting value for money is important, but equally as important is the new system hailed at the G7 in June 2021 by the then British Chancellor Rishi Sunak, which sought to ensure that large multinationals such as Amazon pay fair tax on profits. Our British value of fairness is both prized nationally internationally as well as locally. And that's why here locally we must support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Major. Councillor Curling.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't think there's a great deal more to say on this subject. I would just say that a lot of the questions that Councillor Goddard answered would, a lot of the questions that Councillor Goddard raised would be answered if there was a select committee review. But I'm happy to leave it there. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. So we're now going to vote on the motion. Those in favour of their motion, will you please raise your hands? Those against the motion? Thank you. We are against the motion. That will not be passed. Okay, order number 9.2 on the sheet, Councillor Farley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I rise to move the motion on the order of business before Council this evening. Hillingdon Council has declared a climate emergency. While other things go on around us, nationally and internationally, Council is able to make decisions to improve air quality and reduce our carbon footprint locally. Yes, we have Heathrow Airport on our doorstep, which is a major contributor to the poor air quality in the borough. And yes, we continue to be united as a council chamber, steadfastly opposed to Heathrow expansion. Hillingdon Council should do all in its power to improve our environment. Take the city trees as one of the examples in the motion. These are an innovation that are being used by councils across the country, both Labour and Conservative controlled. In fact, Wandsworth Council, prior to the change in leadership last year, invested in a city tree on Putney High Street, which is showing positive results. Conservative-controlled Cambridge County Council also passed a motion to look into these devices. To elaborate a little more on city trees, they are devices that can absorb the same pollution as more than 270 trees. They are moss-based and take up a smaller area than that number of trees. A city tree can filter 5,000 metre cube of air every hour, which is as much as hourly breathing volume of 10,000 people. And a city tree can reduce fine dust pollution in its immediate vicinity by up to 53%. Not only are city trees a talking point in town centres, there is a variety to them, from those that are connected to the mains, with water and power supply, to those that are self-regulating and self-powered with solar panels. And they which require minimal maintenance. There is also sponsorship and advertising potential working with partners in the borough to support them, and local businesses to advertise on the space available. They also come with seating and can be placed in areas that act as a shaded seating area and can reduce the ambient temperature in immediate locality to them by up to 4 degrees on warm days. While the council works with partners with tree planting initiatives, data tells us it takes mature trees over 10 years old, becoming 10 years old before they can make a real impact on tackling air pollution. Further, we cannot plant trees in certain places, certainly not in the numbers needed, such as in our town centres. Survey data from analysts, place make and visit insights indicate a change in working behaviour, with more residents working from home and using our town centres more, which is good for footfall for our high streets and town centres. With that increase, the council should be concerned with the environmental conditions and keeping them in good order. Madam Mayor, the examples referenced in the motion before members are not the be-all and end-all of options, but they are an example of possible solutions. Technological solutions are being invented and developed, and where appropriate, implemented. Hence, the motions ask for feasibility studies, as while not all solutions may be right for Hillingdon, or not right presently, they may be or become viable in the future. The Council passed a motion in November to consider funding for renewable energy solutions, and the motion before members tonight is a continuation of that in that vein to explore what is possible on the environmental front, which I hope that we all share across this chamber to improve our environment for the benefit of residents of and visitors to Hillingdon. I hope that members will be able to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Farley. Is that seconded, please? Councillor Pincher.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm happy to second Councillor Farley's motion. As a conscious and active environmentalist, I would like to ask Council to view to view this motion as an opportunity to elevate the Council's strategy in creating a green and sustainable borough through innovation and technology, and to stand by its stated commitment to remain open to the opportunity to go further and to be innovative and creative to exceed the stated goals wherever possible. This motion is an opportunity to do this. Air quality across the city is a problem, and it is no secret that at Hillingdon is the second poorest in air quality in London. Hillingdon will always be on the back foot, having Heathrow Airport, HS2, M4 and A40 within the borough. In the Health and Social Care Committee, only in November last year, Hillingdon Hospital and Ambulance Service reported a rise in respiratory complaints, claiming it was one of the current leading causes bringing residents to A&E. Hillingdon Health and Wellbeing Strategy had advised that poor air quality increases the incidence of acute asthma and chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, COPD, and that respiratory disease is the third highest cause of death in Hillingdon. This is documented in the Council's Air Quality Action Plan 2019. As Hillingdon develops and grows socially and economically, so does pollution and its impact. With the development of new technologies and innovation, it is correct to ask, are we doing enough? And what more can we do? Therefore, it is crucial in this climate emergency that the Council explores possibilities in which innovation and technological advancements can help provide better air quality to its residents for a healthier community. Please support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Punjar. Are there any other speakers? Councillor Lavery.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Whilst I understand the intent behind this motion, it is too vague and takes no account of our current climate change action plan for me to be able to support it tonight. The Council's Climate Change Action Plan already has a comprehensive set of actions to improve climate and commits the Council to develop strategies for initiatives referenced in the motion. Our current plan includes a climate change and adaptation and mitigation plan, a carbon offset strategy, and to commission a wider vehicle charging plan. We already have a comprehensive air quality programme which aligns with the Climate Action Plan. A good example will be the scheme in North Hyde Road, which is currently being funded. We've also done air quality screening around many school sites in the borough. We have a feasibility study on biodiversity across 4 sites to produce a report which will look at the viability, the habitat and the opportunities available. We already take part in sustainable urban drainage initiatives, and those of you who are familiar with planning on new buildings will be aware that that is always a feature of both planning and the building regulation processes, including water reusage where that is appropriate. An assessment of emissions is being commissioned to create a plan for reduction and innovative technical solutions and additional ways to reduce our carbon footprint, with surveys due next month on our top 20 energy use buildings. We do have a comprehensive trees programme, which I have outlined many times, and given the time tonight, I won't outline further for you. An update on our climate change progress is scheduled for the February meeting of the Resident Services Select Committee. The Cabinet and this Council will continue to explore any viable technical solutions that become available to ensure that we achieve our climate objectives. But I cannot support this motion. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lavery. And we now go back to Councillor Farley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I thank Councillor Lavery for his response. I do take what he says as a positive in terms of the conclusion that he made, that we'll be looking at technological solutions as we move forwards. It is a shame, though, that that couldn't be reinforced as part of this motion this evening, and that is a regret. Yeah, it's not much else I can say. It's just, unfortunately, it is a shame that the administration has passed a motion tonight on uncosted and undisclosed amounts for legal actions, but you know, we can't sort of move on to feasibility studies, which is just a request. But thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Farley. We will now be voting on the motion. Those in favour of the motion, please raise your hand. Those against the motion, thank you. The motion will not be moved. Just before we do end tonight's council meeting, I'd like to welcome you all to the Mayor's Parlour, even if it's just for a little short time. Do have a look and see if you can see any new items that we have put in the parlour. So to have a look. Yes, Councillor Curling.
Madam Mayor, could I make a personal explanation? Just to clarify sorry.
A point of personal explanation is where a member feels that another member has misinterpreted something that they said in an earlier speech in the current debate. That's the only problem. So unless it was in the debate we've just had, but perhaps we could email something out on your behalf.
Lovely. Okay, well, with that, I hope to see you all in the Mayor's Chamber. And I'm actually going to use, I'm actually going to use the gavel tonight, since it's been a very long meeting. I now declare this meeting closed. Thank you.